Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to episode 88 of Humanity versus Insanity, the Crane Report. Now, it's been a few weeks since I've been here in the studio in Plymouth, primarily because I've been in the north of England on the front line of the anti-fracking campaign. And, of course, I'll be sharing some of those experiences with viewers who join us at 9 o'clock this evening for episode 107 of Fracking Nightmare. But tonight on Humanity vs. Insanity, I'm absolutely delighted to be able to welcome a very good friend of mine and, of course, an AV8 speaker. In fact, this particular gentleman has spoken, I think, at the last two AV events, and he's back very much by popular demand. And I managed to catch up with him in LA. So it's with great pleasure that I say hi to Max IGAN. Hey, Max, how you doing?
I'm good, Ian. Thanks for asking me on, brother. Pleasure to come and talk to you, mate. Always nice to come onto this show.
Well, it's my second attempt because, of course, I tried a few weeks ago, but I think I caught you just as you were about to leave Hawaii.
Yeah, that's the problem. I've been traveling so much, and it's really hard to schedule any sort of live interviews while you're flying. So yeah, that's the way it was. I've been traveling a lot. I've done a lot of conferences and a lot of gigs and a lot of workshops. I went through Mexico and did the Acapulco event, and then I went and did 5 weeks of workshops in Hawaii, and then I went and spoke in Philadelphia, and I came and spoke in LA, and I'm flying out of LA tomorrow to go speak in Canada, and then I'm off to speak at AV8 with you in England, and off to Europe and blah, blah, blah. So this is going to be the last tour I'm doing for a while, which is why it's so special for me and why I've been doing so many talks. But it's been really, really busy time. And, amid global tensions as well, the global situation is pretty out of control this year since Donald Trump took the office. And I think we're seeing a lot of the theatre that we thought was going to unfold. I think Trump's turned out to be the blunt instrument of the New World Order, to be quite honest. I think he had everybody fooled, and it's been interesting watching how it's been unfolding as I've been traveling. It really has.
Yeah, well, I think here's a piece of art from our good friend David Dees, the Trump Express. And as you say, I think, maybe we were all fooled. Maybe, the game plan all along was to get Trump into office whilst convincing us that Hillary was their chosen candidate. And I must confess, I said myself that, basically, obviously, a vote for Hillary was pretty much a guaranteed vote for World War III. But it looks like we got it sooner rather than later with Donald.
Yeah, in fact, Donald Trump's got away with a lot of stuff that Hillary wouldn't have been able to get away with because he's had the support of the independent media behind him for the most part. A lot of people rallied behind him thinking he was going to do the right thing, and he just hasn't. He's just come along with a new business plan. And really when you look at it, like the whole neocon agenda that's been rolling out for the last few years, it's been failing miserably. They've been bogged down, probably due to people like Hillary Clinton taking advantage of the profits they can make and all this sort of stuff. So it hasn't really been getting them anywhere. So they need a new game plan. So Trump's come along and he's got, he's kind of dragged a lot of the independent media along with him. And now we're seeing the controlled demolition of the independent media as well. We're seeing reports coming out saying, oh, this man's gotten to office because of the listeners of Alex Jones and stuff like this. So they're managing to tie it all in together. And Trump's going off there and he's just doing all sorts of damage all around the world and being completely irresponsible. I mean, I'd be surprised if he even lasts his first term. And he'll be deposed from office. You'll have Pence take over, and the independent media will be blamed, and fake news and all this sort of stuff, all the memes they've created. It'll all be blamed for the rise of Donald Trump and all of global instability, and it'll bring about needs to censor the internet, and all sorts of stuff can come out of what Trump is doing. I think the whole thing has been a play. I really do. But Hillary Clinton, as bad as she is, she wouldn't have been able to get away with what Trump has done because we're all onto him. We're all onto her. But Trump's just come along and, he's following the same agenda. You notice recently on all his interviews, he's wearing an Israeli tie. He's got blue and white striped tie. I mean, what does that tell you? And did you see the Easter speech that he did? The Easter Sunday speech? It was all, the first half of the speech was all about Israel. And this was a speech to the Christians of America. So who's this guy supporting? He's just furthering the agenda in the Middle East. He's going out there and furthering Greater Israel, stomping on Syria, the illegal bombing campaign in Syria over this false flag gas attack. Absolutely disgraceful. And of course, he's going and posturing against North Korea to create this theatre of war and theatre of nuclear war to distract from all the other stuff he's doing. And there's not going to be any nuclear war with North Korea. That's ridiculous. The whole concept's ridiculous. I mean, imagine what would happen in North Korea if it stomped on anybody. If North Korea tried to attack anybody, it just gets stomped on by the whole world. But they're using this as a threat for Australia as well. Oh my God, nuclear threats against Australia, because they're having a real hard time locking down the Australian people. They're like they're too concerned with having barbecues on the beach and drinking beer to be too afraid of anybody. So, they've been desperately trying to put the fear of terrorism into the Australian people, and it's not really working. So let's cook up a nuclear threat with North Korea. And I think Kim Jong-un, he's just playing along with the same game. All these leaders collude together to create all this rubbish and create all this theatre to put their populations in fear so they can lock us all down. It's just the same game plan. Trump's not going to change anything. Hopefully the Trump presidency will wake people up to how much theatre this really all is. That's about the best we can get from it, I think.
I think you may be right, and of course, he's done an about face on so many issues, but not least, of course, Syria, where he was effectively stating that it was up to the Syrian people to determine, who was head of government, and whilst alluding to the fact that he recognised that Assad, had the majority support there, and now total about face, and it's all about removing Assad. So, I mean, clearly, he's, as you rightly say, he's following the Israeli-driven agenda, and for North Korea, I mean, of course, there's another issue there, and the same with Syria. Syria and North Korea and Iran, of course, are primarily the three most significant countries that are still operating outside of the Rothschilds' global banking system.
Yeah, funny that, isn't it? It's always these axis of evil is all those who won't have our banking system. It's just incredible, isn't it? But, like I've seen so many of the independent media even justifying the attack on Syria, saying, oh, this was a smart move, it was a chess move, it was this. People have forgotten the whole where we came from. They've forgotten what all this is about. The war on terror is fake. It's completely fake. Any strike on any nation, as far as this is concerned, is it's not acceptable, because the whole war on terror is fake. ISIS is a mercenary force run by the West. You're not going to defeat them by bombing Syria. It's, the Syrian government is the only one who's fighting these people. And this false flag gas attack, it was so obviously a false flag, and just a complete about face. And not only that, but the posturing against Iran, this is all a complete about face. And it's all written in the, what was that book, the Brookings Institute, Which Path to Persia?
Yeah.
The outline strategy they were going to use against Iran. It's right there. He just put it out there verbatim, He's just following the same script. And he's bringing down so much of the independent media with him. And even when you look at Pizzagate and the timing of all the release of these emails that vilified Hillary Clinton, this was perfectly timed to legitimize Trump's presidency, to make it look like there was a big swing to bring this guy into power and he's a truther and all this sort of stuff. Absolute rubbish, absolute theatre for the masses. And everyone's been sitting back waiting for him to do the right thing, and he's just not doing it. People can say he's playing these games of 4D chess that we're hearing from some, independent media outlets. But really, like I said, any attack on Syria is just a continuation of the same agenda. He's not calling it out for what it is. If you want to really stop ISIS, you want to stop the war of terror, investigate 9/11. Have a look at the real fingerprints on that, and you'll find that that's who's running this whole show anyway. All these countries that we've attacked, Libya, Iraq, all of them that we've destroyed, have all been destroyed under false pretenses, and people are forgetting that. Regardless of what moves he's making, he's not calling the truth out for what it is, and that should be important for everybody to pay attention to.
Well, and then we're seeing, it was General Wesley Clark, wasn't it, in 10 years ago now, 2007, who in the interview stated that in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, he was party to a discussion about how they were going to take all these countries out. And of course, what he was doing, wittingly or unwittingly, was effectively putting the agenda out into the public domain. And as you and I have discussed many times, within the belief system of those who think they are the rightful rulers of this planetary fiefdom, they have to tell us what they're going to do. So they put it out there.
Yeah, and nobody complains about it. Everyone just goes along with it, And it's really interesting to watch, like people can look at what's going on with Syria and they can see that this was a false flag, event, this whole thing, and it just justified the excuse of dropping bombs on Syria, and everyone gets outraged about it. And then suddenly, within the next breath, they're posturing against North Korea and claiming that there's a nuclear threat. And people just forget that what was just happening with Syria, and they don't realise that what they're now seeing with North Korea is a completely staged event as well. We're not going to war with North Korea. They can be looking at one false flag and one big theatre charade that's being put forth them. And once they start exposing it and people start waking up to it, all they do is put in a bigger theatre show for them, a bigger production. And people just lose their attention and they go for the bigger production. They don't realise it's just a bigger production. That's all it is. It's astounding to see how many people sort of just slip into this.
Well, and people have very short memories, don't they? I mean, very, very short memories, because, I mean, this whole BS about the gas attack is a direct repeat, almost, of what happened 4 years ago.
Exactly.
Where I mean, the British Parliament, I mean, Cameron sought to get a majority vote, and Obama was relying on David Cameron getting the support of Parliament to sanction his bombing of Assad. Now, fortunately, in 2013, the British Parliament didn't go along with it, and the reason they didn't is because the alternative media, in particular, was getting the message out there and encouraging people to make contact with their MPs to say, look, if you support this, you will be party to a war crime, because there is not a shred of physical evidence linking Assad to the chemical attack in 2013. In fact, as we pretty much now know, it was Saudi Arabia that had provided the rebels, i.e. the mercenaries, with the chemical weapons, but unfortunately they hadn't given them the instructions of how to use them, and so there was an unfortunate leak. And call it a hunch, but I would say something very similar has probably occurred this time round as well.
Yeah, well, very likely. But the thing is, like, even with that one, there was the public outcry that stopped the bombing of Syria. But with Trump, there wasn't any time for any public outcry. And in the next breath, he was bombing Syria, completely backflipping on what he'd said just a couple of days before. And then as soon as there's this outcry about it after the fact, and everyone starts crying out, oh, my God, war crime, we've all supported this war crime, or you've supported a war crime. And England's jumped in and said, yes, we'll even support an attack on Syria as well. And then while he's putting troops on the ground in Syria, because there are tanks rolling through the streets of Syria now, US troops are on the ground in Syria, there's reports coming out, while all this is happening and everyone's in outrage about it, suddenly we've got this whole nuclear threat with North Korea, and everyone just goes, what's over here? Yeah. And they've just completely forgotten about what they were outraged about. It's incredible. Wag the dog. And there's not, like I said, there's not going to be a nuclear war with North Korea. The whole concept's just completely ridiculous. But it's theatre, and it's working for the most part. And you'd be surprised the amount of people on the street here. I had someone come over here last night talking and saying that everybody he's talking to, shopkeepers, his parents, all sorts of people, are living in the fear that they are about to have a nuclear bomb dropped on them by North Korea. That's the average feel on the street in America at the moment.
Well, if a nuclear bomb is dropped on the US, it's going to come from a B-52.
I would say so, exactly. But I don't think they're going to drop a nuclear bomb anywhere. I mean, even if that's possible for them to do that, which is a whole other story.
Sure.
But,
yeah.
I mean, a nuclear attack destroys all business, and business is what runs the world. I don't think there'll ever be a nuclear war, but nuclear war is a great threat. I mean, look what it's doing to the people the average people on the street here in LA are really living in fear of a nuclear threat because, hey, this is LA. This would be one of the targets, wouldn't it? Oh, my God, Hollywood, LA, it's one of the cities they would attack. So everybody here is really scared that they're about to have a nuclear weapon dropped on them by North Korea. That's the average feel on the street. And it's a joke. It destroys all business, and the world is run by business. There will never, ever be a nuclear war. It is completely counterproductive. And I really question all the nuclear threat anyway. I mean, some of the stuff, I've seen reports of people coming out of Chernobyl, a woman who went in there. She's been picking apples from the trees and eating them, hanging around at ground zero, sitting there with her feet up on the table, looking around. All the grass is green. Everything's beautiful. There's birds. She comes out, gets tested for radiation. There's absolutely not a speck on her. At ground zero in Chernobyl. So, what are we really being told about this big nuclear threat that we're facing? I think a lot of it is theatre, and it's a great fear to put in the minds of the masses. Show these big movies of big bombs going off and big clouds of destruction everywhere, and it puts everyone in a terrible state of fear and allows the government to do whatever they want to do. and I think all of them collude together. I don't think there's any threat of major global war ever erupting. I think it's all about control, and I think people need to step back and smell the coffee. I really do, Ian.
Well, I think you're right. But where would you say Putin fits into the game right now?
Well, it's who the enemy can be. Who the enemy can be. I mean, Putin. I don't know. He's a bit of a strange one. He's a bit of an enigma, but I think he's a player. I absolutely think he's a player. I mean, I think Russia's the threat when it needs to be the threat, but it really hasn't been working that well. So now North Korea has to be the threat. Islam has to be the threat. Iran has to be the threat. Putin. I think he's as much a player as anybody else, and he's been sitting back waiting to see how they're going to put in this whole control grid. But it's not really working. I think he's probably supported what Trump's doing because Trump's a blunt instrument, and I think he's just playing his cards right. And he's a politician. He was KGB. I mean, he's not the good guy that everybody's presenting him as. And China as well is a player that people aren't really paying attention to. So put out a new film recently, The Great Wall, with Matt Damon, showing how great the Chinese are, the great Chinese army, real mythological type of movie, really sort of grandiose. And wow, look at these Chinese, aren't they beautiful? Even their army's beautiful, even their weapons are beautiful. It kind of creates this theater of Lord of the Ringsy feel about China, and it sort of softens our approach to China. And Trump, with all his relations with China, I think they'd really like to bring in the Chinese system in the West. I really do. So I think there's so much theatre in play at the moment, Ian. It's going to be a hell of a year to keep watching. It's anybody's guess where we're going to go. But Putin's a player. I mean, he has to be. Otherwise, he wouldn't be where he is.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It is a case of expect the unexpected. And it's interesting you should mention The Great Wall, because that movie, I think, is also quite allegorical, in that it is China that has taken on the mantle of protecting humanity against this threat. I won't spoil the movie for those that haven't seen it. But China absolutely understands its role, and that if this threat breaks through the wall, then it's going to be unleashed upon all mankind. And there's a lot of allegory, I think, contained in that, because China, if it does effectively come into the full clutches of the global control grid, because I don't believe it's in there right now, but if it came into the full clutches, then it could be a very interesting scenario indeed, because China, of course, is effectively buying up the planet.
Well, yeah, they are, and the thing is, the danger that China faces is the industrialization of the place and the enormous amount of pollution, and also the economic destruction of the place as well, enslaving, this Western economic system that's coming into play there, this whole commercial ugliness that the West has sort of infected the world with is coming into play very much in China, and it's very much a cancer on the world. It really is, and that's not to say that there's anything wrong with Western lifestyles or anything, but it's the Hollywood version of reality that's gone out there. This horrible consumer-based throwaway culture that we've kind of enslaved ourselves to, which is what supports this permanent growth system, which is what supports basically environmental destruction and all the things you're fighting against with fracking and everything. This all becomes because of this permanent growth model that we have to keep maintaining, which means everything we make has to be made to be thrown away the next day, so we can replace it to keep this permanent growth model happening. I mean, that's the sort of thing that's coming to China to infect the Chinese way. But when you look at the Chinese way of mono-thinking, if you will, the way they've really got the people regimented and the way they've got the work ethic and all of this sort of stuff, they'd really like to see this in the West as well. And so there's a danger there. But yeah, there is a lot of allegory in that movie. There really is. And it's interesting the way China has always kind of shielded itself from the West. It's also interesting the way China destroyed a lot of its early history as well, though. I mean, you can't trust them. I mean, I don't trust any government, most especially the Chinese. But you can see the approach they have and why they have it. I think it's quite interesting, the Chinese culture, very secretive culture.
Indeed. But go on, Max, go on.
But again, there were emperors that came in who actually thought, okay, well, history's got to start with me, and they destroyed all the history before them. So it's very, very difficult to know what actually happened in China as well.
Absolutely, and of course the West is trying to do that with, and has been trying to do it actually for 2,000 years, starting with the Library of Alexandria. You know, then Bishop Diego de Landa, the destruction of all the texts in Central America, and now again, of course, in the Middle East. You know, part of the agenda there is to destroy any reference to man's early history, because for fear that it might not actually support the Abrahamic version of events.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I've been destroying all the ancient monuments. And that should be a giveaway for everybody about who ISIS really is, because that seems to be one of their main agendas, is destroying ancient Islamic infrastructure and destroying ancient monuments, ancient sites, anything. The oldest cities they can find, they go and completely destroy them. You know, the temples of Palmyra, the whole thing. You know, and it's Western history. I mean, what a joke. What a joking. And what have we got? I mean, you know, everything's been rewritten, and we get people's interpretation of the books that they read. I mean, who knows what really happened? Who knows? I mean, all we've really got is what exists in living memory, because everything else is everybody else's opinion on whatever else it was they read. And then they destroyed the old books for the most part. You know, the best hope we have for isolated situations such as China, if only they had kept their history. But they didn't. And, of course, like you say, the Alexandrian Library got cooked by many different races, you know. So, I mean, they used it to heat the baths there for about a year or 18 months. They used the papyrus scrolls just to heat the baths. That's how many there were. That's the danger of eggs in baskets and going and ransacking the rest of the world for knowledge and putting it all in one suppository or one depository, I suppose, because then it just gets destroyed. You know, so you know, who knows what our history is? That's something that I really try to stress with people. You know, we just don't know. We really don't know. And the best hope we've got to put all of these mysteries to rest is to, you know, establish freedom for ourselves. But we're not going to do that until we can really face what's going on here, and the fact that the world's run by a criminal class which have maneuvered themselves into position of all of our governments. And we've got to stop going by their rules and start holding them accountable. You know, if there's going to be rules, then they need to be held accountable to them as well, and they're not. So, you know, we've got a cacistocracy here, Ian. We've got a criminal class which is controlling every government on this earth, regardless of who they are. Perhaps China's shielded itself from them a little bit with their dynasty, and that's some of the beasts they're trying to hold back. But we out here in the West, we've got serious identity issues, and that's what's really the problem. You know, we don't identify with ourselves enough to realize that we can heal this situation if we're prepared to call it out for what it is, and stop going by what these people tell us to do, and realize that, you know, the world's a mess, and it's because of what these politicians are doing, and ultimately it's because we're letting them get away with it. You know.
But isn't this part of the problem that they're up against right now? There is an increasing awareness of the magnitude of the criminality. You know, thanks to the way in which we can access information today, and although of course they're desperately now trying to redress that, but you know, there is an increasing awareness of the agenda, and because of that, they're trying to accelerate it. And as they accelerate the agenda, even more people become aware of it. So, you know, I mean, it's a race to the bottom right now, basically, isn't it?
Well, it is. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. No matter how much they try to hide it, you know, they're stumbling. They're going so quickly that it's just waking more and more people up. I mean, that's why they've done this whole rubbish with North Korea, just try to escalate it. It's why they're trying to see a threat from everywhere. Threats coming from all directions. You know, internet viruses. Oh my God, online terrorists, domestic terrorists, North Korea. You know, Russia. You know, Iran. You know, Syria, ISIS. Everything they can think of to get people in fear, to keep people distracted, to keep people, you know, just looking for the next thing. So like I said, you know, they wake up to what's going on, they just stage a bigger one, and people just go, oh my God, what's this new threat? And it takes them a couple of weeks before they wake up. I mean, what's going to be around the corner again? I mean, after this North Korea threat blows into, you know, nothing and ends up being hot air in a paper bag the way we all knew it was, what are we going to see next? Are they going to be staging a fake alien invasion, or, you know, a global conflict with Russia or whatever? I mean, what's going to be the next one on the cards? I mean, they should just give up. I think they're coming more and more in leaps and bounds now. And like you say, every one that just turns out to be nothing is serving to wake more and more people up. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And there's stumbling and falling, and each one is just another nail in their own coffin, I think. But it's going to come down to when people, you know, really grow up here and are prepared to step up and just call it. Say, hey, we've had enough of this. You know, we can see the theatre now. We've had enough. And, you know, you all need to be held accountable or removed, you know. And there's such a small group of people running this. And it's just through control of the media and the rubbish that they feed people. Like I said, all these people out here in fear of North Korea because no one in the media is telling them the truth. All you take would be one honest person in the media to just tell them the truth. You know, one journalist to actually do their job, and they could change things. But you know that's the problem, is the fact that everyone's got a television in their room, and they're being told that everything we're trying to tell them is fake news because it isn't on CNN. You know, so it's overcoming that hurdle. But I think even with them doing that, I think more and more people are seeing it. You know, because you can't just believe what these talking heads tell you on TV for too long before, you know, going outside and looking around a little bit and seeing the world's actually different.
And didn't you tell me that you, whilst you were in the US, you were actually interviewed by one of the Fox affiliate stations?
I was. It really, really surprised me. I got contacted by a member of the Kate Daly show, and I came on to this Fox News affiliate, and there I am on the radio, and I can hear the commercials, and they're all Fox News commercials, and it's all kind of interesting. And, you know, the presenter had a very, very, you know, radio voice, very Fox radio voice. There was a male presenter and a female presenter, Kate Daly. And they both had very sort of Fox radio presenter voices. And they started asking me questions. And I was very blunt and very open. I talked about child trafficking. I talked about the Palestine-Israel situation. I talked about all sorts of stuff. And they let me go. They were very, very open to it. And I was incredibly surprised. And I just thought, well, I wonder if these people are going to keep their job, you know. But they're a small station that's actually picked up by Fox and a whole bunch of other networks. About 10 or 11 networks that pick up this woman's show. And she said to me, "Yeah, well, we don't like what Fox do, but we kind of fly under the radar. I mean, they listen to our show quite often because they have to, but I guess they just haven't heard any of the ones where we've really been too blunt, and so we're still on the air." So that was great, and I was really surprised that they asked me on, and I was really surprised that I was able to get away with saying what I said. You know, again, while this has been going on, there's been this huge attack against the independent media as well. They're trying to bring a lot of people in the independent media to public attention, I think. We've seen with Trump, with Alex Jones's support of Donald Trump, for example, we saw the Alex Jones channel on YouTube gain over 1 million subscribers while Donald Trump was running for presidency. It was around about 1.5 million. Now it's around about 2.5 million. And then while he's been brought to mainstream attention, we've seen the controlled demolition of Alex Jones taking place as well. Custody battle, the wife leaving him. There's a movie out now, which is, when you look at it, it's a complete hit piece, probably made by mainstream and Zionists attacking Alex Jones. They called the Alex Jones Deception, the film's called. And I'm no Alex Jones supporter, but this is a total hit piece, and it's been used to wrap all the independent media in with Alex Jones. So we've seen a whole attack and controlled demolition of the independent media taking place as well through the Trump presidency and everything that's been going on. It's been very interesting.
Well, in the UK, I mean, it is a matter of established fact that the print media, I mean, unfortunately, the US doesn't really have any national print media. But in the UK, the national print media has had to reduce its print runs by 30% in just 6 years. And the BBC are starting to have real problems in terms of their revenue stream because people are just ditching their TVs and just not paying the license fee. So here in the UK, I mean, it is a very real issue for the establishment because people are getting their news elsewhere. And there was an academic study done recently at University of Canterbury, I think it was, where it was acknowledged that those people who get their information from the alternative media are much better informed, are more able to articulate why they hold a particular view or hypothesis on something, versus the people who still get their information from the mainstream media because they are literally just parroting it. And actually the people who get their information from the alternative media are less likely to be aggressive in defending their position because they're much more confident about their position because there's substance behind their position, whereas the people that are simply parroting what they've heard or read in the mainstream media basically have no substance behind it. So the only thing they've got is to get aggressive and get argumentative.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it, and that's why they're mounting this attack against the independent media, and that's what made me question as well. I mean, was there some of that, because of like this huge, the way they've been bringing the independent media to public attention more and more. So I've been thinking, okay, well, did they get me on the show and allow me to say these things, hoping I would lapse into that type of extremist Alex Jones type rant mentality, just to get me out there to the mainstream as, oh, look, another nutter. So I've got to wonder about the motivation of getting me on the show to begin with, simply because it's Fox, and why they let me say the things that I was able to say. Or maybe these are just people who want to get the truth out there. Who knows? So, but yeah, you've got to question this. Why this is bringing so many independent media people to public attention at this particular time, while this whole fake news meme is sort of going, rampant everywhere. So I think there's a real concerted effort to get sort of people's faces out there and then label them as extremists or whatever. So we've got to be very careful in what we do. But again, I mean, when you get an opportunity to speak on a platform like that and possibly get the word out to, potential extra couple of 100 million people, then it's worth doing. It's worth going and saying what you have to say. But you've got to be very careful you don't step over that line and come across as some sort of crazy extremist. I think Alex has been very, very careful to actually do that when he's had the opportunity not to do that. Like the appearance on Piers Morgan was obviously that of someone that was out to create a bad impression of the independent media. It was quite shocking to see. So I think even with what we've seen going on with InfoWars and how it's suddenly been skyrocketed to kind of the head of the independent media as far as the mainstream goes, and now it's been brought down and everything's been wrapped into that bundle, I think this has been a play that's been ongoing for quite a while.
Well, quite possibly, but Alex Jones has always been, for me, I mean, it's a portal. For a lot of people, it was perhaps the first port of call, when they were starting to actually question their version of reality. But then, I sense that, I mean, obviously Alex has his hardcore of supporters and listeners, but a lot of people, they get into Alex sows the seeds, then they go away and do their own research, and then they're not going back to Alex because, he served the purpose, and then they're starting to do their own research, and then they're getting their information from multiple sources.
Yeah. It's whether Alex knows how the whole thing's being run or not, or whether he knows how he's being used or not as well.
Sure,
I mean, I'm not ultimately condemning Alex Jones. I'm not meaning to do that, but I'm just looking how this controlled implosion of InfoWars is taking place, and how, like, I watched a couple of reports on it, and it's really interesting to see that, like, you and I, everything to do with the independent media, even topics that Alex Jones doesn't touch on, such as the Israeli issue, is all being wrapped into the Alex Jones basket, and is trying to be tied into this with the controlled demolition of Alex Jones that is taking place. And it's very, very controlled, this demolition that's taking place. I think there's elements even working within InfoWars that are contributing to it. Sort of various extremist announcers who just get on there and spew hate and hate and hate and hate and basically promote the globalist agenda by just sitting there and attacking Muslims all day. So, and not looking at the bigger picture. So I think all of this is controlled, whether Alex knows it or not. He's been used as a pawn. And so much of the independent media, like in the eyes of the mainstream I'm talking about, is being wrapped into this Alex Jones bundle, so that anybody who talks about chemtrails, anybody who talks about vaccine, anybody who talks about the Palestine-Israeli issue, which is something Alex never touches on, anybody who talks about the illegal bombing of Syria, all of this stuff, oh, you got the information from InfoWars, and you're the people who brought Donald Trump to power, and look what Donald Trump's done to the world. This is this terrible thing called the internet, and all this internet freedom we've got that's just brought this whole global situation about. We need to tighten up control. We need to really make sure that everybody who's putting out information is not fake news. And I can really see how this is being played, and it's all being bundled in with the controlled demolition of Alex Jones. And it's quite clever how they've done it,
Well, of course, they got a lot of practice, but this is why it's so important for the alternative media to continue to grow. And I mean, I think it's why it's so important for anybody who feels that they want to start a video blog or an online written blog, get out a radio show, should do it. I mean, because even if they only have 2 or 3 listeners to start with, it's like everything. It takes a bit of practice, and then you get more confident. But get the information out there, because the more sources of information there are out there, the more likelihood is that then when people do actually meet, in the physical realm, then these issues will be discussed. And I mean, I'm guessing it's the same in the States. It's a while since I was in the States now, but in the UK, it is remarkable how you can just run into somebody random in the street, and before you know it, they're talking to you about stuff that 5 years ago would have been deemed as rampant conspiracy.
Yeah, exactly. It is. It's really good to see. And it's important for people to know this is happening everywhere. It's important to see, how they are playing this and what I just talked about. That's the only reason I'm saying it, is just so that people can see how it's being played.
Yeah.
So, don't buy into the whole theatre that they're creating with this. But that's what the independent media is, or what the mainstream media is trying to do with this. And really, the fact that they're even trying this just shows how desperate they are, because, come on, really? Is that the best you've got? I mean, anybody who's even listened to Jones knows that he's not associated with all the people that you're trying to tie in with him and all the issues that you are anyway. So you're really just exposing yourself. So they're getting pretty desperate, Ian, I think.
They are indeed. Well, hey, Max, we've got to start winding up the show now. But you're going to be coming over to the UK for AV8, which is in a little over 2 weeks. In fact, the conference starts 2 weeks tomorrow. You've already said this is going to be your last major tour for the next 3 years or so, at least. You're going to take a bit of a break. And Max, there must be something about AV, because this is, I think, your third appearance at an AV event. But for the last 4 AV events, they have all been followed by an election. In 2015, it was the European elections. In 2016, it was, of course, the UK general election. In 2017, we had the EU referendum. And now, of course, Theresa May has called a snap election. Parliament was dissolved a couple of nights ago. So right now, the UK is effectively without government. And don't be at all surprised if, the players in the shadows try and pull some stunt while government is effectively in recess. So we have a general election here on the 8th of June. So that's going to be about, 6 weeks after AV. Now, AV will, of course, be, once again, an eclectic gathering of people. And, hopefully some synergy will come out of AV8, and there will be a strategy by which we can hopefully get a move away from the right-wing extremism of the current Tory administration.
Yeah, well, that would be nice. It really would. I'm looking forward to AV8. I really am. I love doing your gigs, Ian. And for people out there who haven't been to AV8, it's a great gig. Ian puts on a really, really good show. And it's a really good atmosphere where we get to sit around and kind of hang out together. And I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, it's going to be the last tour that I do for a while. It's actually a big one. I'm going to be touring around until pretty well the end of this year. And then I've got a couple of workshops to do in early next year. And then I'll be in Peru for 6 months doing workshops, and I'll get home sort of the middle of 2018, and then I'm going to stay there until at least 2020. I don't want to be doing any traveling after that. So I am looking forward to coming over and doing AV8 and hanging out and seeing you again for the last time for a little while. Yeah, it's been good doing these the last 2 gigs. I've really, really enjoyed them, and it's a great gig, and I'm looking forward to some of the speakers you've got. You always get a good lineup of speakers in. It's always really good, and people always go away feeling positive and empowered and with an action plan, and that's what I like about your conferences.
Well, and of course, I think it's almost unique in the fact that people, it is residential, of course, primarily, and people are thrust together for 3 nights. In fact, by popular request, I had been asked a number of times if I could extend it and offer a 4-night package, and in fact, the hotel did agree that. So a number of us, I think including yourself, will be staying for 4 nights, and I think we have some 50 plus of the people there. So about a quarter of the people attending AV8 will be there for an extra night, and so there'll be even more opportunity for the informal discussions because, again, obviously AV, I get frustrated, Max, and I know you do, when we attend conferences and you get up on the platform and basically that's it. And if people can snatch 5 minutes with you during a coffee break, then, that's about it. But here you get the opportunity to sit down with people through, the meals, through the breaks. And for me, it's the stuff that gets discussed in the informal moments of AV that's really important, because I know there's a lot of things that happen and manifest after AV as a result of those informal discussions.
Yeah, really good connection points and really good action points and great expansion of the event. These sort of interactions, it's been really good. I'm really looking forward to it.
Great. So, Max, thank you so much for joining me this evening. Enjoy your last night in LA. Of course, the fact that you're leaving LA has nothing at all to do with the fact that the US press are painting LA as a potential target for a North Korean atomic device. Pure coincidence. But Max, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your travels. We'll see you at the Horwood House Hotel. Here's my Rogues Gallery. Not really, of course. This is the speakers at AV8. And it is at a stunning venue. And I'm already talking to Horwood House about AV9 and even AV10. It's an absolutely stunning venue. We've taken over the whole hotel. There are a few rooms that have become available. Unfortunately, a couple of people have had to cancel for health reasons. And the hotel have actually made some extra rooms available because their refurbishing program has been completed a little earlier than they had scheduled. So if you go to the website, which is www.alternativeview.co.uk, or you can call me on 0779 151 8740. So that's it for tonight. Thank you so much to Max IGAN for joining us. It's about midday in LA, so he's got an afternoon ahead of him. He'll be with us at the Horwood House on Friday, the 19th of May, for the start of AV8. And I will be back in the studio next week with episode 89 of Humanity versus Insanity. Thanks a lot. See you next week.